just received information that new data in the state's school aid formula will bring an additional $97 million to New York City on a recurring basis. All of that brings the fiscal deficit down to $5.4 billion. But I want to be clear, $5.4 billion is still a very steep mountain to climb. And there are two paths that we can walk. One that offers long-term stability, and a second one with significant pain that we deeply hope to avoid. The first path repairs the structural imbalance between the city and the state. We want to work with Albany to raise personal income taxes by 2% on the 33,000 New Yorkers earning more than $1 million a year, and to raise corporate taxes on the most profitable corporations. And we know that for far too long, New Yorkers have given far more to the state than what we have received in return. It is time to end the drain. If we cannot follow this first path, we will be forced onto a much more damaging path of last resort, one where we have to use the only tools at the city's disposal, raising property taxes and raiding our reserves. This second path is painful. We will continue to work with Albany to avoid it. This first path will deliver the structural change that we need to recalibrate the relationship between the city and the state. Because as we know, New Yorkers contribute 54.5% of state revenue, but receive only 40.5% back. At the same time, New York City's portion of the state's GDP has grown by nearly 10% since 2010. That imbalance is untenable. Once again, I'm calling for Albany to end the drain. There is no third option of failing to balance the budget. By law, ever since the fiscal crisis of the 1970s, which placed the city on the brink of bankruptcy, New York City has been legally required to balance its budget. We will do so. If we cannot pursue the first path, the only option we have remaining is the second path. At the heart of this path is a property tax increase. This would effectively be a tax on working and middle-class New Yorkers who have a median income of $122,000. The second path also requires us to raid our reserves. It would mean withdrawing $980 million from our city's rainy day fund in fiscal year 2026 and $229 million from the Retiree Health Benefit Trust in fiscal year 2027. These are steps that have been taken before, but only in moments of extraordinary external crisis. Mayor Bloomberg's response to the 2008 financial collapse, and Mayor de Blasio's response to the enormous revenue shortfall caused by the pandemic. We do not want to have to turn to such drastic measures to balance our budget.
Now remember, this is what opposite of what he ran on. He ran on only taxing the rich, and then that's what everybody voted for him for. But he says if they can't meet it, then he's got to tax everybody. Raise property taxes for everybody. Let's go over into just hearing some of the reactions.
There's some controversy surrounding Mayor Mamdani's plan to close the city's $5 billion deficit.
Yeah, the mayor's calling for higher taxes on corporations and millionaires. He also wants the state to send more money. Eyewitness News reporter Phil Tate live from City Hall with the details on this. Some people good with this, others not so much, Phil.
Yeah, Charlene, you got that right. Good morning to the both of you. And that's as the city council appears to be against Mayor Mamdani's budget proposal of raising property taxes by 9.5%. The mayor saying, however, this is a last-ditch effort in order to close in on that $5 billion budget gap that the city is facing. The mayor has repeated the call for higher taxes on major corporations and millionaires, returning more tax dollars from the state to the city. Now, if he's unable to tax the ultra-wealthy, something decided by the governor, he's proposing a property tax increase on more than 3 million residential apartments and over 100,000 commercial buildings. He would draw down $980 million from the city's rainy day fund and another $229 million from the Retiree Health Benefits Fund. The mayor says there will be no cuts to city services, from outreach to the homeless and for services for the mentally ill. However, the mayor is laser focused at chipping away at a $5 billion budget deficit by increasing taxes, but everyone isn't on board.
Think about the senior citizens who's living on the margins already. We have a food insecurity issue. People are struggling out there, and this is a non-starter.
He should be decreasing spending that isn't improving New Yorkers' lives. That's where he should be focused now. Not increasing taxes, but decreasing unuseful spending.
Now, the city hasn't raised property taxes in 23 years. He's expected to see pushback from the council, as you just heard the Queensborough president saying this is a non-starter. We are live outside of City Hall this
23 years they haven't raised taxes in New York. And he is saying that the only last option is going to be a 9.5% property tax hike. Now let's get over into one more video.
The mayor continues to say raising property taxes is a last resort, but he does acknowledge that would raise costs for landlords, which may make freezing the rent for 2 million rent-stabilized tenants difficult. It was all smiles and cheers while breaking ground on more than 300 units of affordable housing in East Harlem. But Mayor Zohran Mamdani is still taking tough questions about his threat to raise property taxes across the board to help fill a $5.4 billion city budget deficit. That is, if Albany does not come through with a tax on millionaires and corporations to plug the hole. Nearly every other local leader, including the city's money man, Comptroller Mark Levine, has blasted the notion of even putting property taxes on the table.
A brownstone owner in Park Slope pays a lot less than a brownstone owner in, say, East New York. So to add more taxes onto that unequal system is unacceptable. We should not be doing that.
Any chance you're backing off on that potential of raising property taxes?
So what we put forward was what we characterized as actions of last resort. What we will spend every day looking towards is working with Albany to increase taxes on the wealthiest and the most profitable corporations such that a fiscal crisis is not resolved on the backs of working and middle-class New Yorkers.
Mamdani says reforming the property tax system in general is a priority. He continues to blame mismanagement by former Mayor Eric Adams, saying he under-budgeted by up to $14 billion. But regardless of how we got here, the potential of raising property taxes could complicate Mamdani's hope to freeze the rent for rent-stabilized New Yorkers. The mayor has now officially appointed the majority of the Rent Guidelines Board. Still, he acknowledges the board is independent and must consider the costs of landlords when setting rental increases each year. If property taxes do go up, costs to landlords go up as well, and it might be hard to justify a rent freeze.
We are working to lower costs for property owners across the city. As I have said, the question of raising property taxes is that of last resort, one that we are deeply hopeful of avoiding.
One more note,
Now, this is basically putting a chink in his chain for all the stuff that he promised. Remember, he promised, he ran on freezing rents. He ran on no property hikes. He ran on only taxing or increasing taxes for the ultra wealthy. And if he can't do it, what is his supporters going to say? Let's keep going.
especially after the cold snap that we've had. He promised to stop those raids of the homeless encampment. Where does he stand on that right now?
Yeah, so this was talked about a lot right before he took office, and there was some concern about his promise to end homeless encampment sweeps. Well, he's not exactly keeping that promise. I want you to think of this as kindler, gentler homeless encampment sweeps, as opposed to what Mayor Adams did. Mayor Adams led with the police and sanitation department, and Mayor Mamdani, after saying he wouldn't do sweeps at all, is now going to do sweeps, but leading with Department of Homeless Service outreach workers. They'll come back day after day after day, so this won't be a harsh effort, but they'll offer this service one day, this service another day. They're really going to try to put a concentrated effort into placing people. But at the end of the day, he does say that people will end up being moved. This was influenced by the recent cold snap that you mentioned, because he said a lot of people came indoors and got offered service for the first time and actually found options that they found acceptable. So he's trying to continue that momentum. Homeless advocates, though, are frustrated with the mayor for betraying this hard promise not to do any sort of sweep at all.
British police have arrested former.
Now, we'll get over into that, but he's going back on stuff he said he promised which is not unusual for mayoral candidates, for presidential candidates. Some stick to their word, some don't. But how will his supporters react? Now, we'll just have to wait and see what all falls out from this crazy situation. But at the end of the day, they still have a lot of money that they got to make up. Now, what is it from? A lot of it's from just them spending too much money on different things that they shouldn't have in the first place. Remember, New York had a lot of migrant crisis, and that still goes back to that when they all flew in, they had to spend a lot of money. A budget deficit, they gotta balance it somehow. And either it's going to be the rich people who they're going to raise their taxes, or it's going to be the regular people who, or everyone else, who their property taxes get hiked up, or different social services get cut. But let me know your thoughts on that situation, y'all. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said.